Health Alliance Plan is a nonprofit health plan based up in Detroit. They're affiliated with the Henry Ford Health System. Scott Lawson, who's joined us today, is their Director of IT Operations. Like you, he's got 25 years on his resume, a lot of platforms, and certainly a lot of perspective on what it takes to operate and recover complex environments. We've asked Scott today to share some details really kind of around their journey as they were put in charge of improving their recovery capabilities. So Scott, I'm going to turn this over to you. Let me see if I can make you the presenter. Scott, you got it?
I do, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So a lot of what Mike elaborated there is exactly what we went through with our journey and our DR redesign. When I took on the position here, I kind of inherited a tape-based cold backup recovery process. Because we had a limited number of machines that we needed to recover, we actually had some good success with tape recovery. However, that approach added significant time to our recovery. Aside from the obvious I/O constraints associated with tape, it also necessitated that we stand up our net backup environment, import catalogs, et cetera, before we could even start the recovery of machines that were more critical to the business. So in a 3-day test window, we were consuming about 24 hours of that test window just recovering our net backup environment. We're limited to certain machines that we were recovering just to satisfy a DR checkbox, if you will. For years, our scope was simply to bring up our core application, which was confined to a single server, and also our financials, which were also on another dedicated server. So essentially, we were recovering 2 servers and restoring a couple large Oracle databases, and that met our DR requirements. But in a real-world DR scenario, I'm not sure how the business would have leveraged those recovered resources. We had no external connectivity to recovered systems. We were not testing a real-world scenario, meaning we had no consideration for business continuity, who would report where for work, where would call centers be located. We contracted for a limited workspace at that recovery facility, but we really didn't have any assignments for that workspace, and we had very limited bandwidth in terms of connectivity for just admin configuration type purposes. Business continuity and disaster recovery were disconnected. Business requirements for impact analysis did not drive DR. This was a challenge for us, and it might be for some of you as well, in that the business and IT sometimes speak very different languages. Speaking to the business in terms of RTO, RPO, synchronous, asynchronous, just doesn't work. Our attempts at completing BIAs didn't net the results we had hoped for, because I think we failed in delivering it in a way that made folks understand the real scenario. We even had several consultants come in. They all seemed to have the same approach by using some survey with check boxes relating to priority and recovery time. We finally started having some success when we started having a conversation rather than passing out surveys. Surveys with gold, silver, or bronze recovery options didn't really resonate with the business, and instead we started having questions like, do you have another process you can use in the event that this system were to be unavailable? How long could you use that method before it becomes really painful and perhaps costly to the business? Does this particular system produce revenue? What's the financial impact of having that system unavailable? Do you have any regulatory mandates that dictate the availability? Are there any fines associated with that availability? We also needed to paint the real picture. When we had these conversations, we explained, corporate's now a smoking hole. We're not talking about the nice-to-haves. We're talking about bare minimums to run the business. When we added context to that conversation, we started to get the answers that we really needed to move forward in a redesign. We started to get answers like, we do have this paper form that we could use, and we could probably go for a week or two before we really started to feel any pain. And when you start getting those kind of answers, then you start to see some recovery priorities kind of bubble up. Another challenge was that our infrastructure growth far outpaced the DR solution that we had. And so like many other businesses, our world became more complex and complicated as what used to be standalone applications started to integrate with other applications. It had things like our customer relationship management system that pulls records from a claim system, that integrates with a call center app, that integrates with a payment service, et cetera. We began to create production processes that span not one or two servers, but dozens. And over a 5-year period, we experienced something in the neighborhood of a 400% growth in infrastructure. With that kind of growth, it became apparent rather quickly by extrapolating our previous DR test results against that percentage of growth that we were looking at a recovery that would likely take months and would certainly extend an outage beyond what the business could sustain or survive. So once we saw that train coming, we had to work on the approach. In our case, we have a fairly small team for the amount of infrastructure we support, so we knew we needed some help. From a technical perspective, we have some very talented folks, but assessing what's needed in a DR environment is no easy task. Really needs to be comprehensive if you intend to be successful and stand up a solution that works. We need to collect data that was, quite simply, my staff just didn't have time to collect. Things like data flow diagrams, projected organic growth per applications, analysis of network and SAN throughput, how much data we were backing up, what our deduplication rates were, details on our remote sites and what connectivity was required there. What are the implications from a licensing perspective if we stand something up in DR? And that's just a few of the items that we had to look at. And to do something this robust and be cost effective, you have to understand everything in detail so that you can right size the solution. So this is where our relationship with SIS began, and I would say really a reliance on them as a partner. We had issued an RFP that was all inclusive, and we wanted to select a partner to conduct the assessment, compile the data, work with us to design the solution, and from a cost perspective, make sure the solution was all inclusive. We needed to keep it below what it would cost for us to locate our own equipment with our parent company. I think we started out with approximately, I think it was 8 or 9 candidates and narrowed it down to 3. And then we went through a blind scoring process. And quite honestly, I've never seen an RFP of this size scored this way. We actually had a board that was comprised of folks from HAP and Henry Ford, and SIS was actually selected unanimously across both organizations. So I won't go through this current slide line by line, but these are the deliverables that we expected to receive from SIS once they were selected. And you can see there's a lot of the things that Mike covered earlier were exactly the things that we were being challenged with and the things that we needed SIS to deliver in their engagement, and they certainly did. Some of the requirement objectives that we came up with for the redesign after finally having a successful conversation with the business was an RPO of 10 minutes and an RTO of 4 hours. I can tell you that's pretty aggressive. I was pretty worried when we came up with those numbers, but we've far exceeded that. We'll get to a slide in a little bit that kind of gets to those numbers. But with SIS's help, we were able to do that and then some. Obviously, had to have support for critical applications, ability to scale, right? So we'd already seen that 400% growth, and we knew there's going to be more coming. And I can't go out and renegotiate a new contract for DR or stand up a new design every time that we have some change here. So it had to be a flexible solution, something that could grow with us. We had to support a complete site failover. The approach that we have in our DR solution now is it's an all or nothing failover. So we had to be able to have a partner and a solution that could take every piece of infrastructure and technology that we had and support that. Data consistency and data integrity. We needed a design that would replicate data at the right frequency. We needed to have continual checks on that data to make sure that the data integrity was there. Along with that data, we needed to make sure that we're checking for data corruption, and we had to have minimal performance in the event of a failover. So there's getting into some of those other acronyms that Mike brought up earlier, the MAO. We've really gotten down on this one where the impact of a failover is minutes. I think the last test that we had, we failed over 79 servers, and again, there's a slide later, but 79 servers, over 30 databases, and the whole thing was done and tested in like 58 minutes. So certainly we had minimal performance during a failover. And it had to be manageable and maintainable, as well as secure. And that last piece here with the business that we're in, securing that data is huge. And I can't say enough about the homework that SIS did on the facility that we use for our equipment. It's absolutely first class. So phased approach, that's really the only way to kind of ensure success and make sure that things are financially palatable to senior management here. This slide kind of represents some of the comparisons between having made that capital investment and had a co-location type of solution in comparison to the hybrid cloud that we have with SIS. Right off the get, when you look at a co-location, you're looking at floor space and capital for that equipment, and we were looking at just for raised floor alone, something like $40 or $45 per square foot, and you look at a $2,500 or 2,500 square foot data center, and you're well over $1 million just on floor space. So SIS came in, helped us put those financials together, helped us tell that story to senior management. So these are some of the savings that we experienced, some of the advantages of going with the cloud solution. We pay as we grow. It's been very flexible for us. It's a very easy process to not only add but also remove things from the contract. SIS has been very good about that. Bundled services and really the control. Right, so we're in a multi-tenant environment, but we've been able to control the configuration and the design of the solution as we need to adjust to HAPS environment. So here's where I show how untechnical I've become as I try to kind of stumble over this drawing here. We replicate between Detroit and Chicago using Hitachi's Universal Replicator. We've deployed 2 1-gig circuits from diverse carriers to handle the replication traffic. Those circuits are plumbed through Brocade 7800s, which provide our encryption as well as a suite of tools for monitoring our replication performance. The replication is handled by shell scripts that manage not only the replication, but also any journaling that needs to occur if the replication links are down. Our VMware recovery is accomplished via SRM. All of this is done in an isolated test network that does not touch our production network, so it allows us to use the same host names and IP addresses. In the event of a real disaster, we'd make a couple of changes to swing that network over to production. We've also implemented MPLS circuits so that we have multiple locations that can access our DR resources if need be, and that starts to mitigate some of the BC challenges, allowing folks to work from pretty much anywhere. A question I get a lot is if you're relying on replication as your primary backup and you test with that data, what happens when you stop the replication? And the answer is we don't. We actually replicate twice. We replicate to Chicago, and then we replicate again within the Chicago site, and we use that second copy for testing. So the replication between Chicago never stops. For testing, we leverage Citrix NetScalers to access our applications, and the presentation servers are replicated from production. So it's exactly the same look and feel as if you were to log into Citrix during a normal workday. We don't rebuild servers per se. All of our server images are replicated and are in an active passive state, so we simply power up the servers and mount current data to those servers. So here's the results of a couple of our last tests. I probably should have put test 1 in here because actually test 1 was 100% successful too. But this just kind of shows the growth. By our third test, we were covering 79 servers, 50 databases, plus our Exchange, and all that was up in 59 minutes. And that's not just the infrastructure. That's up and tested. That's folks logged into it, looking at data, creating data, sending data between applications to make sure that the integration works. And so we're really happy with the results of these tests thus far. Some of the replication statistics we're seeing, right now we have about 61 tera protected in Chicago, and we're seeing an average of about 6 terabytes of data change a day. And we can, with a combination of the tools within Hitachi and the tools on those Brocade 7800s, we look at our latency of that data change, and we're seeing under 10 seconds on average, and a max of 50 seconds over a month period. So really far below the RTO, RPO targets that we had. So lessons learned. Honestly, the technical piece is fairly easy. Of course, my teams would be rolling their eyes right now. But there's some other things that are required to be successful. Let's say you need a C-level sponsor or champion, someone selling this upstairs, if you will. You need buy-in from the business. It isn't impossible to drive this from an IT perspective. That's basically what we did, but it's much more difficult than if you educate the business on the risk and let them drive it. The biggest risk for losing support is that the cost can quickly overshadow the benefits. So you need to limit the cost by ensuring that the business understands that operations can be recovered in phases and tiers. Ask the right questions. Do you have an alternate manual process? How long can you go without this application? Don't offer prime rib if White Castle will do. You can have too much of a good thing. For us, we sold the works on this DR design and what it was going to deliver, and then when we demonstrated that we could, everyone wanted their solution to be part of the DR plan, whether it was really critical or not. As Mike said, everyone likes to think that their work is critical, so we started getting almost a sprawl type of behavior, and we really needed to cap that to keep the cost of DR where it needed to be. And I think automate. Use orchestration tools, tools like SRM and scripts wherever possible. It makes things repeatable. It lessens the dependency on specific individuals. Think about it. In a DR situation, you don't know what the composition of your teams are going to be. And our recovery process is getting pretty close to a push the button and watch level. Our goal is to have eventually non-IT folks successfully perform a recovery. And really, select a partner, not a vendor. Anyone can sell you capacity on a raised floor. Select someone who's going to have a regular cadence with you, even when there isn't money on the table. Someone who wants to see where they can help and where they can save cost for you. SIS knows a lot about HAP's infrastructure and our project portfolio because I think they really want to help HAP be a better IT organization, even when it doesn't necessarily mean a sale per se. So that was kind of our journey and kind of the things that we learned. We've got some things to do yet, but we're far and away better than we were when I inherited that tape recovery, and really with the help of SIS, we've gone a long way in a short time. So, Mike.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you spending some time and walking through that. I mean, there's a whole lot of vision and certainly a whole lot of work that's gone into the current capabilities from a team, and it has been a journey. I think you saw as Scott went through those slides, test 1, test 2, test 3. There was a very phased approach that Scott's team took to demonstrating the value of this to the business, and it was very important, I think, in getting buy-in from the business as he worked on rolling out that vision. So, Scott, thank you again for doing that. Appreciate it.